And I guess we'll ask Lauren to take it away.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great, and you can hear me, so 2 for 2. Good
2 for 2.
afternoon. I am pleased to present the overview of Baltimore County's proposed fiscal year 2023 operating and capital budgets. Okay, Jeff, hold on, wait a sec. Hold on one sec. Okay. So the submitted FY 2023 government-wide operating budget totals $4.8 billion and represents an increase of $510 million or 11.9% over the adjusted fiscal year 22 budget. As you can see, the general fund portion, the green piece of the pie, comprises over half the government-wide budget, or 55%, followed by non-county funds of 28%, which are the funds directly received primarily by the education-related entities for which the council only approves the spending level. It does not appropriate these funds. The government-wide budget also includes the enterprise funds, which are self-supporting, which are not appropriated and shown for informational purposes only. Because of so many previously approved federal grant funds, this pie chart really is under-reflective of the amounts of the county will have for the ability to spend. So this chart provides some added detail on the government-wide operating budget, including the changes from the fiscal year 22 to 23 budget for each fund. The right column shows the percentage changes in each fund's proposed budget. Nearly 63% of the fiscal year 23 increase, or $319 million, is in the general fund, as I will detail in the following slides, and another 23% of the increase, or $116 million, is in the non-county funds that flow to the component units. To provide some fiscal drop back to the largest part of the budget, it really involves some of the outside funding that I've talked about that flows to other parts of the budget, along with some revenue trends bolstered by general fund savings leading to healthy surplus funds, as we'll see in the next several slides. So federal aid continues to play a critical role. Much of these funds have already been budgeted with time remaining to spend them. Some of these funds will still require the council's approval. Fiscal year 23 direct state aid totals $951 million, an increase of $76 million, or 8.6%. Much of this aid flows not into the county's general fund, but into restricted county and school system grants programs. This is state aid to the operating budget. We will cover capital aid later in the presentation. So the unprecedented level of stimulus aid to the county and the associated general fund savings, along with a strong underlying income tax structure, has resulted in a healthy general fund surplus balance. You can see here the level has exceeded $500 million the past 2 years, with more than a third of it secured and stashed away in the rainy day fund. This provides a 10-year history of general fund revenues. Here you can see the strong underlying income tax structure I've mentioned, the green part of the revenue bars, which shows growth beginning in fiscal year 20. The boost in baseline general fund collections provides the county with the structural ability to increase general fund spending. With the structural room to grow, the county has increased its general fund budgeted expenditures to meet departmental and public needs. For fiscal year 23, the general fund budget totals $2.66 billion and reflects an increase of approximately $319 million, or 13.6% over the adopted fiscal year 22 budget. The pie chart shows how these funds are allocated broadly across functional categories. The largest share is for education, followed by general government and public safety. I also want to point out the orange slice of the pie. There's a significant amount of funding in PAYGO, which goes to both general government and schools. So as I just mentioned, the general fund budget is showing significant growth by $319 million, but rest assured, the Spending Affordability Committee's guideline is in place to ensure that the growth in ongoing funding commitments doesn't exceed the growth in the county's economy. The fiscal year 23 budget includes hundreds of millions in non-recurring costs to contribute to capital infrastructure as well as the employees' retirement system. As a result of these one-time contributions, the proposed fiscal year 23 general fund budget is approximately $2.8 million under the spending affordability guideline. This slide shows the revenue sources of the general fund budget. Almost 80% is funded from property taxes and income taxes, as well as $166 million from surplus funding. One-time or the non-recurring costs exceed the amount of surplus funding, which, consistent with the Spending Affordability Committee policy, means that the surplus is not being used to pay for ongoing operating costs. This slide shows the composition of the general fund's budgeted revenue, the left side, compared to the legislative branch's revenue projections, reflecting a negligible difference in total. The revenues fund the expenses shown on this slide, which is showing the history of budgeted expenses since fiscal year 15. The different colors on each bar denote the composition of the general fund budget. As you can see from the increase in area for the various colors, the primary drivers of the fiscal year 23 general fund increase are in PAYGO, followed by personnel expenses and insurance and retirement. This next slide shows the significant changes at the agency level ranked by dollars. The most significant changes are in the school's operating budget, followed by general government PAYGO contribution to the capital budget, and then followed by retirement. This next slide gives you a different perspective on the changes in expenditures. Here we can see the components of the change in the general fund budget from greatest to least, with the largest change being the stepped up PAYGO contributions to the capital budget. Next is the general government contributions for retirement and retiree healthcare, or OPEB. Then we see general government salaries, education funding over maintenance of effort, and then some smaller increases. What you don't see here are the federal and state grant funds that I was discussing, which are providing a lot of services to county residents. We will discuss these non-county funded programs in the related agency budget hearings. This next slide shows positions, not just limited to the general fund, but for all funds. So here we can see the positions supported by both grant and county funds. For fiscal year 23, there are 753 net additional authorized positions, all funds. The primary increase is for schools, 579, and that's due largely to increases in teacher positions, IEP chairs, health and student personnel services, and positions and paraprofessionals. Based on the revenue estimates contained in the budget projects $449 million in total surplus that will be at the end of fiscal year 2023, including $250 million that'll remain in the Revenue Stabilization Reserve account, 10% of revenues, and an additional $200 million outside of the rainy day fund, about 8% of revenues. So as noted, a significant portion of the surplus that is anticipated to be available this coming June 30th is to be budgeted for PAYGO contribution to capital. This slide shows a history of general fund PAYGO appropriations. As you can see, in fiscal year 2023, the amount of PAYGO being funded is historic. PAYGO can be expected to help the county lessen its debt service spending over time by reducing the need for the county to borrow. The fiscal year 23 budget is in compliance with the Spending Affordability Committee's debt service guideline, which is set at 9.5% of general fund revenues. The ratio is estimated to be 8.2% for fiscal year 23, based on our forecasted revenues. For this debt measure, the positive general fund revenue forecast helps suppress the ratio. The fiscal year 23 budget is also in compliance with the Spending Affordability Committee's debt outstanding guideline, which is set at 2.5% of the county's total assessable property value. The ratio is estimated to be 1.9% for fiscal year 23. Total debt outstanding is decreasing in fiscal year 23, while the assessable property value continues to rise. So the pie chart shows how the county's consolidated public improvement projects will be funded in fiscal year 23, with funds totaling $328.1 million. The majority, or 65%, is funded by general fund PAYGO, followed by state funds, debt premium, and then reallocated general obligation bonds. Fiscal year is the second year of the biennial cycle, meaning that the general obligation bonds were appropriated in fiscal year 22, which was the first year of the cycle. This slide does not include state funding that goes directly to schools for school construction projects. This slide reflects the upcoming borrowing ordinance to be placed on the November 2022 referendum, which will seek voter authorization to issue debt totaling $339 million to fund the FY 2024 capital budget. This borrowing ordinance will be presented as bills 32-22 through 40-22 on the May 26th council legislative session. Bonds are not actually issued until needed to meet the cash flow requirements. So now focusing on the council appropriated consolidated public improvement projects being funded, totaling $328.1 million. As you can see from the pie chart, school projects received the majority of funding, $97 million, followed by building projects, $92 million, recreation projects, $45 million, and community improvements, $37 million. Given the number of projects that are funded, details will be discussed during the hearing on the capital budget, which is scheduled on May 18th. Also, capital issues are presented in the respective agency hearings as well. So this slide reflects the total amount of Built to Learn Act funding anticipated for the county, totaling $420 million, which will be provided on a rolling basis over several years. Shown are the approvals to date, as well as the anticipated approvals for the various projects. These funds are not reflected in the county's capital budget, but rather they represent additional state funding for school projects that will flow directly to the school system. Also, the public school construction program is continuing to provide its usual funding in addition to the state's Built to Learn Act awards for fiscal year 23. That funding totals $106.3 million for fiscal year 23. This amount could change, as noted by the footnote, with an additional allocation to occur next month. Again, this funding flows straight to BCPS and not through the county's capital budget, but it is always for projects that also receive county funds. So finally, we are providing a glimpse of the full capital budget, which includes the Metro District water and sewer projects that the council does not appropriate. The proposed FY23 capital budget totals $352.1 million and includes the $328.1 million for the consolidated public improvement projects we've discussed, and an additional 24 for the Metro District Fund projects. We are awaiting a response on whether Metro District rates are changing for fiscal year 23. And the concluding slide is that details on the various agencies' budgets, as well as the capital budget, will be discussed at the hearing, which begin on May 5th and conclude on May 18th. Budget deliberations are scheduled for May 19th, and budget adoption is scheduled for May 26th. The budget hearing schedule is posted on the council's website.
Wow. Thank you, Lauren. We certainly appreciate that very thorough overview of the budget. Are there any questions or comments from the members? One last call, give everybody a chance to get a hold of the mute.
Can I ask a question?
There you go. We got
Thank
that.
you.
Mute.
Lauren, do you have any indication the extent to which the Build to Learn Act has infused our funding sources? In other words, the specific amount attributed to Build to Learn?
Not off the top of my head, but I can check and see if we have that information.
Yeah, I'm just curious because that was the failure to pass that bill delayed things, and you know, to the state's credit, they finally did pass it, and
Right.
it represents an important revenue supply as we
Right.
aim to get a lot of these projects done. So
Right.
thank you very much. Okay.
Right. The slide I showed was what we know at this point in time, which is showing $420 million, you know, to the county will receive over several years.
Okay.
And listing the projects that have been approved and are anticipated for approval with these funds. And that's kind of like the snapshot of where we know things are.
Yeah, I'm just curious as we move forward and we tackle some of the MIAPIS recommendations. That's going to be really important. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Marks. And again, our sincere condolences for your loss. And thank you for being with us. No one would have, everybody would have understood if you were not here. Certainly understandable. So we thank you. Any additional questions or comments from anyone?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, Lauren, I don't know if you have the answer to this question, but for new construction of our schools, is there a percent of the cost that you can tell us the state is covering as opposed to the county for new construction?
I will get that. I know there is a cost share, and I have to check with my capital person unless Liz is on and wants to answer it. I know there is a split, and whether it's changed, I will get that information to you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
a quick and easy one. Just thinking about the capital budget for public works and infrastructure. I'd be curious, I guess, from the executive's office, you know, how are we prioritizing what capital's, you know, flowing where, you know, given that, you know, we are prioritizing needs not only in schools, but also with, you know, public works. And what you know, one of my concerns is, you know, you can only stretch a dollar so far. And I know in the past, we've definitely put a fair amount of capital in schools, and rightfully so. But I'm also curious on how we're looking from what's being prioritized at Public Works and which ones are we able to tackle now versus, you know, next year or two. So I'm just curious on that as well. It's a lot of capital needs out there for sure. So a curiosity as well. Thank you.
We can certainly incorporate that into the capital, you know, budget package and or public works package, so the administration can address it.
May I say something? And to answer that question also, the capital budget has a lot of non-lapsing funds, as you know. So a lot of what was appropriated in the past, just because it's not showing up in this budget pie chart, there's a lot of authorization that's already out there. So this doesn't give a full picture, is my point.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilman Catch.
Yeah, I noticed in the budget there are additional positions in the school system in public safety. And we all know we have, you know, the current positions aren't filled. And when the police and the school system come and for their hearings. I really would like to know what their plans are with these additional positions to fill them all with qualified people. They're fairly large numbers of increases in staff for both. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Catch. In fact, to pick up on your comment, I would also like to know if you have a brief, I think I have the answer, but a brief explanation as to why such a significant increase in public safety. Lauren?
Most of them are for new positions in the police department that are outlined in the executive's budget message and the executive summary from school resource officers, forensic positions,
The animal.
Wellness director?
right.
Mhm.
So the majority on that slide for public safety is attributable to police. And we will identify all those positions in the package as Councilman Catch has, as you know, noted, there and as schools as well. So there are just a lot of new positions for those agencies, wellness, right?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a question about the police budget also. I cannot go to a community meeting without hearing about speeding. And so I was just wondering, I guess my colleagues probably feel the same way. And are we looking towards increasing the number of traffic enforcement officers in the police department? Because I don't know if it's post-pandemic or what, but the level of speeding is on a whole different, it's on a whole different plane than it used to be pre-pandemic.
Yes,
But
we'll-
maybe it's not articulated in the budget,
Yeah.
but it's something that that I guess we'll see the police department in our budget hearings and perhaps
Yeah, that'll
in
be
detail at that
a
point.
appropriate time to take it right to the chief. Any additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, the only programming note that I would offer is, of course, the work session is in about 4 minutes. And if everybody can turn that around fairly quickly, because as you know, we have the padlock bill that still remains and the police accountability bill with quite a few speakers. And then we have the 6 o'clock budget hearing. So just, again, just a programming note for everyone.
Don't worry,
sir.
the train will be moving swiftly.
Thank you.
We want to give everybody an opportunity to speak on both of those events.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, we'll call it a day. We'll take 5 and we'll come back and do our work session. Thank you.